There's a moment most people never talk about. Not the moment of failure, not the moment of loss, not even the moment when everything you built collapses around you. It's the moment right after, when the dust settles, when the noise stops, when you're standing in the wreckage of something you thought was permanent, and the only sound left is your own breathing. That moment, that exact moment, most people look away. They rush to rebuild, to explain, to fix, to fill the silence with distraction, anything to avoid what's actually happening inside them. But some people do something different. They stand still, they look directly at the wreckage, and they ask a question that almost nobody is trained to ask. What is this making me? Not, why is this happening to me? Not, how do I get out of this? Not, when will this end? What is this making me? That question is the difference between someone who survives chaos and someone who is built by it. And tonight, that's exactly what we need to talk about. Let me tell you about a man named Viktor Frankl. He wasn't a soldier, at least not in the traditional sense. He was a psychiatrist, a thinker, a man who spent his life studying the architecture of the human mind. Then the Nazis took him. Between 1942 and 1945, Frankl was moved through 4 concentration camps, including Auschwitz. His wife was murdered. His parents were murdered. His brother was murdered. Everything that had given his life external structure, his work, his home, his family, his identity as a professional and a husband, all of it was stripped away. And yet, when the camps were finally liberated, something extraordinary had happened inside Viktor Frankl. Not despite the suffering, because of it. He had discovered something that no amount of comfort could have taught him, that the last human freedom, the one freedom no system, no tyrant, no catastrophe can ever take, is the freedom to choose how you respond to what happens to you. Called it attitudinal freedom, and he wrote a book about it, a book that has sold over 16 million copies, a book called Man's Search for Meaning. But here's what people miss when they quote Frankl at dinner parties or paste him on Instagram. He wasn't writing a self-help book. He was making a confession. He was saying, I went into the darkest place a human being can go, and what I found there wasn't despair. It was clarity. It was the strange, almost unbearable discovery that suffering, real. Suffering, not the curated discomfort of a 5 a.m. cold plunge. Suffering has the potential to reveal who you actually are, not who you think you are, not who you want to be, who you actually are. The problem is that we live in a culture that has declared war on suffering, and I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it structurally, architecturally, algorithmically. Everything around you, every notification, every platform, every product is designed with one singular purpose: to ensure you never have to sit with discomfort long enough to let it teach you anything. You're sad? Here's a playlist. You're anxious? Here's a meditation app. You're bored? Here's 17 minutes of video that will dissolve the feeling before it fully forms. And it works. That's the terrifying part. It works. You can go weeks and months without ever sitting inside a difficult emotion long enough to ask what it's actually about. But here's the cost. When you spend your life escaping discomfort, you stop developing the internal architecture to handle it. And then when the chaos that life inevitably delivers finally arrives, because it will, you don't have the tools, you don't have the muscles, you haven't done the reps, you've been comfortable. And comfort, Nietzsche would tell you, is the most insidious form of slow death. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote something in 1888 that people have been repeating for over a century, usually on gym posters and motivational reels, without understanding what he actually meant. Was mich nicht umbringt, macht mich stärker. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Everybody knows the quote. Almost nobody understands the philosophy underneath it. Nietzsche wasn't writing a bumper sticker. He was building a framework for human transformation, a framework based on a radical premise that we are not fixed beings. That identity is not something you discover, it's something you forge, and it can only be forged in resistance. Think about what a forge actually does. You take raw metal, impure, soft, inconsistent, and you subject it to extreme heat. You beat it, you shape it under pressure, you expose every weakness in the material until those weaknesses are either burned away or forced to strengthen. What comes out on the other side is not the same material that went in. Nietzsche called this process Selbstüberwindung, self-overcoming, and he argued it was the fundamental task of a human life, not to be happy, not to be comfortable, not to be validated, to become, to use every collision with resistance as raw material for transformation. But I want to be precise here, because this idea is easy to misuse. There is a version of adversity makes you stronger that is just toxic stoicism dressed up as philosophy. That says feel nothing, endure everything, never show the wound. That's not what Frankl discovered in Auschwitz. That's not what Nietzsche meant by self-overcoming. The real insight, the harder, more demanding insight, is this. Chaos doesn't automatically build strong souls. Chaos reveals what was already being built. Let me say that again because it's the center of everything. Chaos doesn't build you. Chaos reveals you. The forge doesn't create the gold. The gold was always there, buried inside impure ore. The forge's job is to burn away everything that isn't gold. This means something uncomfortable. The way you respond to adversity is already being determined right now, in this ordinary moment, by the quality of what you are building inside yourself before the crisis arrives. There's a man I want you to imagine. His name doesn't matter. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel grew up with a father who was never quite there, not absent, just emotionally inaccessible. The kind of man who provided without ever being present, who paid bills but never said, "I'm proud of you," who showed up to events but left the room the moment real feeling entered it. Daniel learned to read this silence as truth. He learned to read the withdrawal of warmth as evidence of his own inadequacy. He learned, and without anyone ever saying the words, that love was conditional, that belonging required performance, that the way to survive was to need nothing and produce everything. He grew up, he became successful by every external metric, the job, the apartment, the relationship, the life that, from the outside, looks assembled and intentional. And then his relationship ended. Not because anything dramatic happened, because she looked at him one day and said, "I don't know if you're actually here." And in the silence that followed, in the particular quality of that devastation, Daniel came face to face with something he had been running from since he was 8 years old. The feeling that he was fundamentally not enough. Now, here's where the fork in the road appears. Daniel has two options. The first is the one most people choose. He can treat this pain as a problem to be solved. He can immediately begin the process of explaining, fixing, moving on, upgrading, finding a new relationship, a new project, a new identity to inhabit before the old one fully collapses. He can stay in motion because stillness is unbearable. The second option is the one almost nobody chooses. He can stay. He can stay inside the wreckage. Let the full weight of it land. Ask the question, not how do I fix this, but what does this reveal about the architecture of the person I've been building for 30 years? He can treat the pain not as an obstacle but as a diagnostic. This is the difference between resilience and transformation. Resilience is the ability to bounce back, to return to your previous state after disruption. It's a valuable quality. It's what keeps functioning people functional. But transformation is something else entirely. Transformation means you don't return to your previous state. You can't. You've been changed at the cellular level of your character. What came through the fire is not what went in. Nassim Taleb, the philosopher and statistician, has a word for this. He calls it anti-fragility. Fragile things break under pressure. Resilient things endure. But anti-fragile things actually gain from disruption. They become stronger not despite the chaos but because of it. The human nervous system at its deepest level is anti-fragile, but only if you let it do the work. The moment you anesthetize the pain, the moment you reach for the distraction, the explanation, the immediate fix, you interrupt the process. You prevent the forge from doing what it came to do. You stay the same. Here's where this gets harder, because I'm not talking about catastrophic suffering alone. I'm not talking only about war zones and concentration camps and the kind of loss that makes the news. I'm talking about the ordinary chaos of an ordinary life, the career that collapses, the friendship that reveals itself as conditional, the version of yourself you'd been building for a decade that suddenly stops making sense, the moment you realize you've been living someone else's idea of what your life should look like. These moments, quiet, unglamorous, not photographable, these are the forge. And the question is always the same. Will you look directly at what this is showing you? Or will you find a way to make it smaller so you don't have to change? Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who had more worldly power than almost any human in history, and who spent his evenings writing private meditations that nobody was supposed to read, wrote something that has stayed with me. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't writing philosophy for an audience. He was writing it for himself in the dark, trying to remember something he kept forgetting, that every obstacle is also an opening, that the thing blocking you isn't separate from the path. It is the path. But I want to be honest about something. This process is not linear. It is not clean. It does not look like a motivational reel. When you choose to stay inside the chaos, when you choose to let the forge do its work, there is a period that nobody prepares you for. It is the period of not knowing who you are. The old version of you has been exposed as insufficient. The illusions have been burned away, but the new version hasn't formed yet. You're standing in the gap. Psychologists have a word. For this state, they call it liminal space, the threshold between what was and what will be. The Latin word limen means threshold. You're standing on the threshold, and the threshold is profoundly uncomfortable. It feels like failure. It feels like loss. It feels like you're moving backwards. But this is the crucial distinction. Dissolution is not destruction. It is the precondition for reconstruction. The cocoon before the butterfly is a period of complete dissolution. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't just rearrange itself. It digests itself. Its body becomes undifferentiated cellular soup before reorganizing into something structurally different. If you opened the cocoon during that process, you wouldn't see transformation in progress, you would see disintegration. And yet, let me bring you back to Daniel. He stayed in the wreckage, not because he was heroic, not because he had read Frankl or Nietzsche or Marcus Aurelius, but because, for the first time in 30 years, the pain was so precise, so pointed, so unmistakably aimed at something real, that he understood on some level that moving away from it would cost him something he couldn't afford to lose. He started therapy, not the kind designed to make him feel better, faster, the kind designed to help him understand why he had built himself the way he had. He found the 8-year-old inside him, the one who had learned that withdrawal meant inadequacy, that love required performance, that the cost of needing something was too high. He didn't fix him. He didn't heal him in the Instagram sense of the word. He listened to him. He found out what that child had decided about the world and about himself, and he had the most important conversation of his adult life, a conversation with his own history, his own architecture, his own pattern. And when he came out on the other side, he was not the same person who had walked into the wreckage. He was not fixed. He was not healed. He was not optimized. He was truer. His relationships became more honest, not because he had become more vulnerable in some performed therapeutic way, but because he no longer needed to protect himself from himself. The false structure had burned away. What was left was more real. This is what strong souls are made of, not the absence of chaos, not the absence of pain, not some extraordinary genetic inheritance of toughness. Strong souls are made of the willingness to stay. 2. Stay inside the discomfort long enough to let it teach you something. To stay with the question when every instinct is telling you to reach for an answer. To stay with the burning when every reflex is telling you to step back from the flame. Nietzsche wrote, "One must have chaos within oneself to give birth to a dancing star." He wasn't being poetic for its own sake. He was describing a precise psychological truth, that the vitality, the authenticity, the fullness that comes through a person who has genuinely confronted their own chaos, that quality is unmistakable. You can feel it in a room. It has a kind of gravity, not because they've been polished, because they've been forged. And now one final thing, because this is where I want to be most precise. All of this, Frankl in Auschwitz, Marcus Aurelius in his private diary, Nietzsche in his notebooks, Daniel in his wreckage, all of it leads to the same question. Not, how do I survive the chaos? But, what am I becoming as I move through it? This is the question that separates a life lived unconsciously from a life lived with what Frankl called tragic optimism. The ability to say yes to life even in the face of suffering, loss, and impermanence. Not because life is fair, not because suffering always leads somewhere worth going, but because you have decided that the way you move through difficulty is a creative act, that you are not simply a product of what happens to you, that you are, in the deepest possible sense, the author of how you respond. This is not optimism in the shallow sense. It is not the claim that everything will be fine. It is the claim that even when nothing is fine, you still have the irreducible freedom to decide what you are building, to treat the chaos not as an interruption of your real life, but as the material your real life is made from. If you made it to this point, you already know something about yourself that most people are still avoiding. You know that. The hardest questions are the ones worth staying with. You know that real transformation doesn't come from optimization, it comes from honesty. And you know that standing inside the fire, rather than sprinting away from it, is the work. The Untamed Mind community exists precisely for the people who've made that choice, who've decided that the examined life, the difficult path, the willingness to be changed by what you encounter is the only one worth living. If that's where you are, you know where to find us. The forge is already lit. The only question left is whether you'll step inside.